ball in cold weather places. Boy, if they had that bad boy here this year right now, boy, they never do nothing silly like that ever again.
I left the house without the tights under the jeans, Bo. And I thought I was a hardened New Yorker. I had my character built by the cold, and I am still shivering, kind of, right now, as we speak.
Kind of sort of your own fault.
I should have acknowledged my vulnerability. I regret ever making fun of you.
Yeah, well, when did you make fun of me?
Well, you know, you don't like to walk around outside.
Wow,
and I'm like, character is built
you been
outside.
Me. I wasn't paying attention. My ear's bad, by the way.
I apologize. First name, the Pelicans. Because Pelicans GM Dell Demps returned a call to Lakers president Magic Johnson on Tuesday night, per the LA Times reporter Brad Turner. Previously, there had been reports of radio silence between the teams, Bo. The mantra apparently had been, quote, feel free to join LA as a free agent in 2020, end quote. But does this all mean that LA actually has a real shot to get AD before the deadline?
I mean, how much are they going to be willing to give up? Ultimately becomes the question. Because, yes, I think that the Pelicans would prefer not to trade with L.A. I think most of the league would prefer that the Pelicans not trade with L.A. because haters exist in every walk of life. And when it comes to hating in the NBA among executives, they hate on the Lakers more than anything else.
Yes, they do.
But how overwhelming would a Lakers package have to be in order to make this happen? Let me throw a scenario out there for you. Woj and Ramona Shelburne are reporting that Kristaps Porzingis is still looking at the Knicks being like, show me something. We don't trust what it is that you guys are going to do. If you're the Knicks, don't you put a stamp on his rehabilitating behind and take him down to the post office and ship him to New Orleans and try to get Anthony Davis?
I think you have to do that because there are now offers on the table, it seems. We have Magic Johnson reportedly offering 5 different trade scenarios. Ingram is in one iteration. You got Lonzo Ball, a number 1 pick in another iteration. Everybody seems to be in the mix. But I keep returning to what you said before about what these teams that feel like they're being taken hostage by their stars, what they feel about LA. Because keep in mind, Dell Demps is the man whose hand is over the big button here. And he worked, lest we forget, for Greg Popovich as his vice president of basketball operations in San Antonio. And how did San Antonio treat Kawhi Leonard, Bo? They said, I hope you enjoy Toronto. I hope that you know that we're not going to be bullied around here, and this feels like how this is going to go long-term for this team.
Well, I think, and what makes this more interesting with Davis, that's unlike the Kawhi situation. Now, I think San Antonio got lucky in that Toronto had looked at their team and said, we need to blow this up. And rather than blow it up and go into rebuild mode, they were able to blow it up and give themselves a year of Kawhi Leonard and then figure it out. If you were to trade for Anthony Davis right now, you get a year and a half of Anthony Davis. And what we've seen in some other examples is that year and a half could be enough time for you to convince somebody to stick around. The Darren Williams trade, for example, that's what wound up happening.
That's
Even
right.
less than a year and a half a year, Paul George, we saw that happening. Is there a team that's got the confidence to say, we're going to get this guy, we're going to bring him in, we're going to get him to like it, and then he's going to wind up staying like Paul George did?
Yes, the extension is the next huge domino here. We seem to hear that the guy prefers LA, but speaking of people being convinced that Anthony Davis is going to stick around, it doesn't feel like the Pelicans are at all convinced of that because this is how they approach their hype video.
Yo, this is crazy.
Before and after,
the top is before. You'll notice the difference between the top and the bottom. Yeah. Like he's just not there anymore. Watch this. He doesn't come back.
Spectacular editing.
Yeah, like they didn't try to like redo it or come up with some new concept or anything. They were just like, yo, take him out of everything that we have. Leave an empty space if you must.
Do it big, like Nikola Mirotic, I suppose. But this is the Photoshop approach to a slow motion divorce. And this doesn't hint, it declares we don't like being treated this way.
It declares to me that he's not going to play another game for them this year, keeping in mind that they did this whole Jedi mind trick thing of acting like he wasn't there when he was in the building. Right? He was there. He was sitting on the bench. And by the way, he watched the 4th quarter of the game from the locker room. Like, this spells out to me that they're trying to get him out of there before the trade deadline, which is smart because they could probably get more by doing this now than they can later because Davis's value falls every day that passes because the team that receives him gets less time with him.
Right. Plus, he has the finger injury, which means that if they have any incentive to not do anything, there's your excuse right now.
All right. Thank you. Next name is Roger Goodell. Yesterday, some Saints players took issue with Goodell appearing to say he spoke to them about the controversial pass interference call. Let's listen.
We understand the frustration of the fans. I've talked to Coach Payton, the team, the players. We understand the frustration that they feel right now.
All right. Now, during the press conference, Michael Thomas of the Saints tweeted, quote, "He ain't talked to us." Then today, the NFL clarified. They said Goodell was saying that not that he talked to players, but the players were part of the group of people who were frustrated. Pablo, are you buying this?
I am buying that Roger Goodell is clumsy in these settings. I don't think, though, that he left himself open to a very obvious fact-checking exercise. Because Roger Goodell is many things, but his number one goal yesterday was to avoid further liability. What this feels like, Bo, given the arrangement of the words, is that he meant a period, but really what that ended up being was an opportunity for the Saints to jump back into the conversation.
Yeah, like one of the difficulties with dealing with incompetence is that you often take it personally and then you realize, no, they mess stuff up all the time.
Yep.
I think that is what went on here. The reason I think this, and I really don't think that Goodell is lying, he specified, I talked to Coach Payton. And after that, after that he says the players, the fans, and all of this stuff right there. He wouldn't have said the players. The players would have been everybody. My guess is he would have specified, I talked to Drew Brees or I talked to whoever it was. But no, I don't think that he was trying to say that he talked to the players. If for no other reason than even Raj knows that lie would immediately catch up to him. No, he's just not very good at his job. And in a setting like that, you can't afford to not be clear. And there he was, not being clear.
Clarity would have been useful, but you said that this is a guy who's not good at his job, and I agree. But the question then becomes, as Roger Goodell yesterday took the state of the union. What's the state of Roger Goodell right now? Because I agree, he's still clumsy and still making messes. But if his job, Bo, is to not implicate ownership and to make sure that the money is still rolling in, I get why he's sort of like, I know I'm unpopular, I'm not going to change that. Why do I have to give you more than that?
Yeah, but see, what I wonder if this has happened with Goodell. Remember, Goodell was so concerned with the image of the league and, the shield and all of this stuff. You got to wonder if at some point Roger Goodell looked up and looked at the owners and was like, why do I care about this so much more than you do? And you know what I think that point was? When they embarrassed themselves over Kaepernick in spite of him trying to do something that was halfway the right thing.
Last name, Rob Gronkowski. Yesterday, Gronk was asked about the toll of football and said this to NBC Sports Boston, quote, "It's tough, it's difficult to take hits to the thigh, take hits to your head. Abusing your body isn't what your brain wants. When your body is abused, it can bring down your mood," end quote. Well, what was your reaction to that?
He sounds like a grown man. Right now, of course, that shouldn't be that noteworthy because he is, in fact, a grown man, but he has created this character, this persona that is perpetually in a state of childhood. This dude's been in the league now for 9 years. That's a lot of blows. That's a lot of shots. And what I think Gronk is self-aware in the sense that he knows what we expect from him, but also apparently self-aware in recognizing that there's a limitation to how long, not just that he can do this, but that he'd want to do this.
Yeah, Rob Gronkowski, people may not appreciate, is turning 30 in May. And as people in our 30s, you feel old. You feel older. And you're right. He is locked in this eternal childhood kind of character. But he is now also feeling like this golden retriever who's contemplating his mortality. He was supposed to always be happy-go-lucky. I love football. I love spiking things. I'm going to gyrate wildly. People are going to love it. But now he's talking about how his mood feels, how his mental health feels. And remember, what happened before last season? He confirmed that he wanted to retire if they traded him to the Lions, Bo.
Well, this is where it gets fun to me because Bill Belichick kind of has some control over how this goes if he wants to, right? Like, Gronk did not look like previous Gronk last year. And going into last year, Belichick looked at this like he looks at most of these situations. Get out a year early rather than get out a year late. He has to be looking at Gronk now like, yo, this is the time to get out. If Gronk has demonstrated that he doesn't want to play for anybody other than the Patriots, then Belichick can say, hey, I don't think we're bringing you back next year, and then he walks off into the sunset.
Right, and old Gronk, so people remember, he looked like this. Shout out to TMZ for the video, but this was the energy and the youth of that guy. And now this guy is giving thoughtful, introspective interviews about whether he's going to leave this thing that enabled him to do.
Hold on, though. He's still the same guy because that video right there was taken less than a year ago.
Well,
so, right now, let's not pretend like this
is
all of a sudden becomes something different. The point is, just because he's this guy doesn't mean that he is not aware of what is going on in a larger sense. And he does seem to get that. And if I'm him, what more is there for Rob Gronkowski to do as an NFL player? That's me putting my sensibilities into him, but that would be my question.
Well, no, but that's it. We know his brand. He was the guy who told kids don't need Tide Pods, ha ha ha. And now he's a guy who's like, I worry about my brain. I worry about my health. I worry about walking. That's not a thing old Gronk necessarily spoke.
And he's talking about stuff like the shots to his thighs and things like that. Like,
old
look, man,
people
this stuff hurts, and he just doesn't want to do it anymore. I get it.
Coming up next, R.J. Barrett. Is he holding back Duke?
Hot take. Psst, I've got a secret. High Noon is brought to you by Pizza Hut. No one out-pizzas the Hut. Picked at Pier 17. Brought to you by Chase.
Hey, man, I don't think we talk enough about this. We sure let Kristaps Porzingis' brother talk a lot without us chastising Porzingis for putting his brother in charge of stuff. Not everybody gets it that good.
Or without nicknaming the brother. We called Dennis, Uncle Dennis, brother Giannis. Welcome to the stage.
There you go. Quote, he can end up shooting the Blue Devils out of the NCAA tournament if they aren't careful. Wrote Jonathan Jarks of The Ringer about R.J. Barrett holding back Zion Williamson and Duke. Pablo, think this is a serious problem?
It's a problem because the guy on the right, Zion Williamson, Bo, is shooting 70% in conference play and scoring 25 or more. No one has done that in like the 27 years that such statistics have been tracked. So any shots that are taken away from this guy and in favor of a guy who's been really inefficient in losses like in this Gonzaga game, I could see that being problematic.
Yeah, so the issue with Barrett is that if you watch him play, you understand why it is that people are so excited about him. Like, you watch him play and you realize why Tracy McGrady likes him so much, because he reminds you a lot of Tracy McGrady. But he's an inconsistent shooter, and how well he's shooting doesn't have that much of an effect on how much he's going to shoot. So yeah, in a sport that's decided by a single elimination tournament, he absolutely could shoot them out of the tournament, because that's just how the tournament works.
So the difference, though, with this duo, because between two egos of this caliber, right, number 1 and number 2 pick in the draft coming up, usually there's tension and friction, but I read a great story by Dana O'Neill in The Athletic that pointed out Zion Williamson says, I have an older brother, a younger brother, but R.J. Barrett is almost like my twin. They're roommates. Credit to Coach K for getting this friendship off the ground, but does that assuage any of the concerns? Because they have chemistry. They're really good together.
What does them being friends have to do with R.J. Barrett missing shots? We're not having a discussion about whether or not they're going to get into a fist fight on the court. They are friends as it stands, and Barrett shoots too much.
Yeah, that's still a problem. The next quote. I will be quite surprised if he didn't continue for quite a while as our quarterback. Said Patriots owner Bob Kraft. Bo, Brady turns 42 this summer. Do you think him playing at 45 is now more likely than not?
No. I won't care if he's playing at 44. I won't say that him playing at 45 is more likely than not, because playing pro football at the level he's talking about is crazy. So maybe it can happen, but look, Kraft, I think, is saying ultimately what you have to say. They're in on this Tom Brady thing literally until the wheels fall off. But history has indicated to us with quarterbacks, you're not going to find out the wheel fell off until you're riding on the gangster lane down the freeway. That's just how it goes. The cliff happens and you fall off immediately, and you don't necessarily have a warning that it's going to come.
If anybody can take Father Time into double overtime, which may describe what we're watching now this year, it is this guy. It is Tom Brady. The issue is that at some point he gets caught up with, and that's inevitable. What's interesting to me is that this is a clear repudiation of what we had considered Bill Belichick's perspective. He wanted Alex Guerrero, the guy maybe responsible for his longevity, out of the building, off the plane, off the sideline. Jimmy Garoppolo, the threat to his longevity, sent him away ultimately because of Bob Kraft. That speaks to this relationship more than any other.
No, Kraft has decided that he's going to ride this Brady thing all the way out. And Brady, by the way, calls him RKK. Did you see that? He called him by his initials. And I'm just, okay. Like when did Bob Kraft become the president of the United States?
Yes. When did you get to nickname your rich friend what he has on his cufflinks?
Quote, I find it quite disrespectful. They don't bring up Kobe's name. Kind of pisses me off how they just skip over him and say LeBron. Said Shaq to Howard Beck, Bleacher Report. I forgot it was Shaq halfway through the quote. Then I totally Shaq. Pablo, does Kobe deserve more respect in the GOAT conversation?
He gets plenty of respect. Like, the GOAT conversation is a two-horse race. Kobe Bryant is the third-party candidate. He is Ross Perot. He is Jill Stein. He is somebody who wants to, destabilize the main conversation, but he has plenty to be proud of. Like, is it offensive for me to say that I think Shaq is better than Kobe? Is it offensive for me to say that Kobe's merely a top 12 player as opposed to a top 2?
Kobe is one of the greatest players of all time. Kobe is not the greatest player in the history of the Lakers. Kobe is not the greatest player to come from Philadelphia. Kobe is not the greatest player of his era. In fact, I would make the argument that Kobe was never the best player in the NBA. I think it went from Shaq to Duncan to LeBron. That's not shade, though. He's so good. He is one of the 2 or 3 greatest shooting guards in the history of the NBA. But he has no business in the discussion of who the greatest player of all time is. That is a rarefied air that he is not in. Who I think is in that rarefied air, Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Those are the 4 guys that I'm putting up that high.
Do you find it funny that Shaq, though, has emerged as like the most unexpected Kobe stan? Because I did not see this from the last time they were playing together.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, don't be surprised if that ultimately turned to Shaq being like, I told him everything he knows. It really belongs to me. Coming up next, find out how rough last night was for Enes Cancer.
You can take this show to go on Apple Podcasts. Bomani has one, too. So do I. We'll let you know if Pablo ever gets one, loser.
Yo, it is crazy, though, that the Super Bowl is this weekend. We're talking about a lot of basketball, and the basketball is more interesting than the Super Bowl.
And yet we are still talking about New Orleans. So good for that city that they still managed to be the NBA news cycle.
This is fun, too.
Absolutely. Today's number, 6. That is Kristaps Porzingis' jersey number on the Knicks. Woj reports today that he gave the Knicks the impression that he would like to be traded. So is this happening? Should they trade him?
I mean, there's a real hot place where people want ice water. And Porzingis is in that situation because he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of this season. Unless he's going to play on the qualifying offer, he can't really do anything to make this trade happen. But the Knicks need to look into it. Yes. Look, man, Anthony Davis is out there. The Pelicans are ready to move him. If this guy don't want to be here, he could help you get a guy and then try to convince Davis to stay.
I have many fond memories of Kristaps Porzingis as a Knick. Fewer than his reputation may suggest, however, and this is a guy who's coming off of an ACL injury, right? So that's why he's not going to take that qualifying offer, and that's why the trade deadline is a hard deadline, it looks like, to get him for something. And no one out there, not Boston, not LA, not anywhere else, and we're seeing all of these cities jump into the fray, no one can offer more than the Knicks can between him and Knox and maybe that pick for Anthony Davis. This is how the Knicks get Kevin Durant. This is how they get Kyrie. This is how dreams come true. This is how dreams come true, Bo.
I like Anthony Davis, but I have to say, watching him go to the Knicks just to see Knicks fans be Knicks fans and wait for whatever it is that makes it to where y'all can't win, that is the joy the NBA needs. The NBA does not need the Knicks to be good. The NBA needs the Knicks to be good enough to get y'all hyped so the rest of us get the joy of watching y'all stink.
It is a 5-on-5 sport, and you give me 3 stars like that.
Whoa.
3 of them.
We're getting 3.
No, we're getting 3. We're going to get him. Well, we're going to get rid of him. We're going to get Anthony Davis. We're going to get Kevin Durant because he's still coming. And then we're going to get Kyrie Irving because guess what Kyrie Irving wants to be? He wants to be a winner. And guess what New York is dying to be? Say it with me.
I love this. I love this. You hear that, y'all? The Knicks ain't got a free agent worth a damn in 30 years. They going to come off this offseason with 3 superstars. That's what they going to do. That's what the Knicks going to pull off.
Contention is coming. That's all we need. It's the Eastern Conference. We can do this.
Y'all.
And yes, it is we now. It is absolutely we. I'm back on the bandwagon. I'm leading the bandwagon.
Once won a playoff game to cut a series to 3-1 and confetti fell from the ceiling. You remember that?
I do remember.
You do remember that, don't you?
I remember finger rolls. I remember bricks. I remember John Starks asphyxiating. I remember Jeremy Lin being the greatest moment of my life and still waiting for a moment to beat that.
Ah, you did mention John Starks. You know where he's really popular? Houston. He's the greatest. He's Houston Rockets legend. They need to retire his jersey in Houston.
In closing.
He could have rode on the parade float.
Rolando Blackman could have used you.
In closing, Big 3 announced yesterday that Kendrick Perkins, who, seriously, is 34 years old, would sign up to play in the Big 3. That's right. My guess is he's there to commit fouls. Hard fouls. It's a valuable skill in 3-on-3. And anyway, that made me think of what can make this league even better, Pablo. They need them cats out there calling their own fouls. That's right. Can you imagine them that call their own foul circumstance?
That's actually brilliant because I want cameras. I want body cams on everybody.
Yeah.
What does it look like when Steven Jackson is evaluating whether there was blood?
Well, ask me this. Hold on. Do we have a time that Kendrick Perkins would have tried to call a foul? He would have tried to call an offensive foul?
Oh, that's right. I do remember a snappy turtle-esque human
here it is.
Doing that.
Come on, man. You can't do that to me. That's against the rules.
Dunking on the closest thing we have to a Sphinx.
Yeah, there it is. And I had forgotten. Mozgov caught like the first one, right? But this was very much like the Mozgov.
In some ways, it's even better because Kendrick Perkins, a monument of a man as he is, should have known better. But given who's in the big three, like, Ice Cube, man, like, use this idea.
Now just imagine that. Steven Jackson and Kendrick Perkins, both from the Golden Triangle of Texas, then finally saying, man, shoot for it.
Can we get Sheed? Can we get Sheed involved? Let's get everybody on that list, please. But in closing, when Bomani and I co-hosted First Take many moons before we birthed this show, Nick Saban was a guest. And when I asked what jokes Saban and his good pal Bill Belichick make when we media types are not around, he mostly glared. But now, thanks to NBC Sports, we may finally have an answer to my question. Let's watch and listen.
He used to joke with me and say a couple of things, but besides that, he never really...
Like what? Like needle you? That was the way he motivated you? Just take little jabs at you?
Definitely. Like if I was catching a lot of passes that day, he'd try to say something like, hey, Josh, you keep catching all these passes. How about you hold these? Or something like that.
Oh, right.
Just something. Hey, Josh, you keep catching all these passes. How about you hold these? Or something like that.
Oh, right.
Just something.
Yo, Nick Saban. Like, I don't want to jump to this point, but I'm going to do it already. If there's any Alabama player who wants to bofa Nick Saban, now is the time to do so. No.
I don't recommend you do that, as you probably would like to keep your scholarship. However, if Nick Saban comes up to you and says, CDs and tapes, don't answer the question.
Do not.
It's not going to go the way that you want to.
But you try and get me on a D's blank like almost every other day.
I'm just keeping everybody on their toes.
I have not fallen for it yet.
I ain't worked for Dan in 2 years. He's still scared it might happen. Highly questionable. Coming up.